Welcome back to Liberty and Finance and Reluctant Preppers. We have a very special guest because, in one sense, this is the guy who started it all. We're speaking with Elijah Kaiser Johnson, also known as Elijah K. Johnson of the Elijah K. Johnson Report, and also known as the founder of Finance and Liberty and Unconventional Finance and a lot of other things that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about how it is that I got started in what I am doing from his influence. And just wanted to thank you, Elijah, for joining us this first time officially on Liberty and Finance.
Dunagun, thank you so much for having me.
So one of the things I promised a few people who've been asking me understandably curious questions is, are you guys related? What's this all about and everything? So this is our big reveal moment as far as the relationship that goes back not just to the fact people know that you started Unconventional Finance, which became Finance and Liberty, and that later on you handed it over to me, and I took it and rebranded it as Liberty and Finance. But what they might not know is that my name, Dunagun Kaiser, and your name, Elijah Kaiser Johnson, is related to the fact that you're my son, and I'm your father. And that's part of a lot of big story about how this all got started and how I got involved in this. But if we could talk to you a little bit about how you got started in, this is a very, as you called with your old title, Unconventional Finance. This is an unconventional path for a man of your age, especially since you got into this before you were 16 years old. And if you can maybe tell us and tell our viewers how it is that you got mixed up in the world of money and finance and economics and all that, and eventually how that led into broadcasting and so on. But can you maybe start out by telling us what it is that got you involved? Because many, many young people today have no idea. All they know is that they have a debit card, and that's all they know. So what actually got you involved in the whole research into money and all that went with it? What was the very earliest thing that got you started in that?
Well, yeah, Dunagun, Father, thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, and really, I guess it had to start with coin collecting. I've been interested in money, coin collecting as far back as I can remember. One of my first coins, I remember my sister actually got interested in this at first with coin collecting and everything like that. One of the first coins that I got was this Morgan silver dollar. It didn't have David Morgan on the front. It actually had Liberty on the front. But
believe it or not, the Morgan silver dollar is not named after David Morgan. That's right.
Exactly. But David Morgan, one of the first people I interviewed, great guy, and I love having him on the show as well. And one of the guys that I think really helped me get to where I am today and everything. So, so it started with coin collecting, just being interested in coins, paper money, all that. And then I was like, well, where does this money come from? And being homeschooled, by you and mom, I was like, well, I could write a report on this. And I think you encouraged me to do that. So, you were helping me kind of doing some of the research.
Yeah, that was actually my strategy, just for you homeschool dads out there. Here, Elijah, cover your ears for a minute.
Yeah.
So any homeschool dad out there, when your kid comes to you and says, hey, why is the sky blue, or where does money come from, or whatever, and you don't know the answer, you just look really wise and you say, that's a very good topic. Why don't you do the research on that, and then we'll talk about it together. So that's what I did as a homeschool dad.
Well, it worked. So, doing some of the research. And I remember at the end of the report, I'm like, well, like the Fed creates money, right? And then it somehow comes to the banks. Like, I don't know what happens. We finished the report and I'm like, what? How is money created? I still didn't really know. This was back in third, fourth grade. And then, I got back into coin collecting. I was like, wow, interested in learning about how, pennies don't really make any sense anymore. We shouldn't create pennies because it costs more to create a penny than it actually is worth. It's like we should just get rid of those. We should have dollar coins instead of, $1 bills because they last longer, all those kinds of topics. And then I remember being on a drive with you and you're saying, well, it's so interesting because the money doesn't really have value in and of itself, doesn't it? And that kind of got me thinking again, and I was researching a bit more about this. I'm like, yeah, how is money created? How is money created? And I watched this video about the Federal Reserve, and that everything past then is history, right? And yeah, so I just kind of learned about how the Fed creates money out of nothing, and there is no backing to it. And people can disagree about should the Fed exist and all that stuff. Bottom line, in my opinion, is money doesn't have backing anymore, and inflation's going to happen, and you should protect yourself because of that. So I, started a YouTube channel and talked about these kinds of topics, started interviewing different experts on the topic, and, eventually got to, 30,000 subscribers. I remember you started your YouTube channel, and yeah, it's just kind of been, it's just continued to grow after that. And now I'm working with Miles Franklin, and you have your amazing YouTube channel, even bigger than mine now. So yeah, it's just been a great journey now.
You skipped over one thing I thought you were going to tell, and that was when you talked about creating money from nothing, was the money creation that you were doing in our basement. Can you tell people about that?
Oh yeah. So one of my fascinations was like just with old currency, right? And I found this website of essentially they had like all these pictures of the dollar bills from the 1800s and the 1700s and early 1900s and all those times. And so I actually was printing out the bills. I don't think I should have been doing that, but writing copy on it. So I just had this like stack of counterfeit bills, and it's like, well, okay, I eventually burnt them because I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble about this and all this.
Well, you were depth first interested in. You never scratched the surface of any subject. You plumbed the depths of it whenever you got into it. So back when you were into U.S. presidents, prior to that, you carried around the house this laminated placemat for putting under your plate at the table of U.S. presidents. You can buy it at the game store or whatever, and it had all the presidents on it. You studied them, And I remember your older brother was going through the living room at one time, and he was asking me a question. He said, did they ever have 3 presidents in the same year, like because of an assassination or anything? And you were sitting over on the couch, and you said, yeah, it happened twice. You were like in 5th grade or 4th grade at the time, and you proceeded to tell us about the times when we had actually 3 presidents in one calendar year. So you were already like a total geek fan of U.S. presidential history. And when you found out that your buddies, were on some of these old bills, you found U.S. Grant, with his side profile on the $50 bill, was it back in the day, and so on. So you started printing out those. I mean, I think it was one of the reasons there was automatically a tie-in because of your love of money and of presidents. Yeah, but it got scary for us as your parents because you started bringing up, at first they weren't very realistic, and then you learned how to do them in color. Then you learned how to get the front side and the back side to line up by turning the paper over and printing it out again until you get it just right. Then you learned how to soften up the paper after you cut out the bills so they'd feel nice and floppy and worn, and it got scary for us because we said, these are getting too good. and that for the tie-in was for us, we made you write copy on them because they were looking too realistic.
Yeah.
But then you said, well, what's the difference between what I'm doing and what the Federal Reserve just prints them out of paper and then calls them money? And so at least you weren't trying to pass them off at the store. But anyway, that came back to me of a step of what the difference is between creating something that has no intrinsic value and then suddenly getting to call it value. So when you chase that down, I think we even, on vacation, we often did homeschool field trips. And one of the trips that you convinced us when we went to Washington, D.C., was to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and there we saw actually the printing of those sheets of currency, which you purchased one in a gift shop.
Yeah, and actually I got this on the field trip, so yeah.
Oh man, and then we went from there across town it wasn't very far, over to the Federal Reserve building, and we saw all these scary-looking posts out front, like you can't get up close, and the guard told us to back away. So we went around to the side entrance, and there was a guard desk, and there were people walking in, so we thought, okay, we'll do that way. And we walked in there, and the guy stopped us and said, well, what business do you have here? Well, we're just kind of like trying to learn stuff, so we're here to go in and learn stuff. And they said, there's no public access, there's no public tours. And that was weird because if you think about it, that's where the magic happens, right? That's where they monetize these printed pieces of paper and say, now they're money. But we didn't get to see the magic wand or any of that part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just a interesting thing that happens with the Federal Reserve because, I mean, throughout history, whenever a government has taken their money off of a gold or not had it backed by anything, the currency has eventually collapsed. So it's like kind of my thinking was, well, okay, so we're at that stage. We've been at that stage for, about 50 years now, almost 50 years. And some people would argue, maybe back to 1933 more accurately, or, when the Fed was created in 1913. So anywhere from 50 to 100 or so years, we've had this kind of pseudo backing of the currency or no backing at all. And that never ends well. And we're trying it again. And, there's arguments for that and everything to stimulate the economy and everything like that. In my opinion, we just need to protect ourselves for the worst case scenario.
So back to, you made the leap also from your interest in coin collecting, your interest in the monetary supply, currency supply, and then suddenly becoming a broadcaster on YouTube. You mentioned David Morgan along the way, but that's a big leap. Most people who even get interested in a topic don't become a broadcaster, publishing and creating tens of thousands of subscribers. So what was that leap all about? What in you made that leap from I'm learning stuff to I got to publish this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of experience on YouTube before. I, was composing some music and stuff like that and putting it online. So I had a little bit of experience with YouTube, but it seemed like, a whole different level. I think one of the things was like, this is really important and I want to share this with people. And I was seeing that other people were doing the same thing, interviewing financial experts and so on, posting those on their YouTube channel. So it was kind of just like, this seems like something I could do, why not do it? So, and hopefully it'll help people. So.
Yeah, I remember sensing that spirit from you of this is too important for people not to know about it. And if I can get the word out, why not? Which is interesting because not everybody, if you think about it, almost everybody has the opportunity. Almost everybody now has the access to the internet. Almost everybody has the basic tools because the tools have become simpler and simpler that it would take to be able to do this. And people do publish whatever silly cat videos or trivial things that really don't matter. But you took that same opportunity and said, I think this is important. It's impacting people's lives. It's like having like you said, there's this impending. It's always not gone well. It's like there's this train coming down the tracks towards us, and we got to get the word out. Because I remember you saying stuff like that at the kitchen table. It's like, hey, this is like people need to know this stuff. Yeah, if we didn't know this stuff, we're smart, but we didn't know this stuff, so nobody else knows this stuff either. So we better get it out there. So how did you make the leap then from just a hobbyist to somebody who was like attending national conferences? Not attending, excuse me, being asked to be invited to be a speaker at multiple national conferences, I remember, and other things like that. That's a big leap also.
Yeah, I think I definitely have to attribute that to, a lot of the people that I interviewed because they really helped me, get the word out, share my channel with their viewers and so on. And I remember Carrie Letts also, was the one who I was first interviewed by and, invited me to speak at the conferences that he held. So, yeah, it was so much of the people that I was interviewing and the people who were interviewing me were really helping me in that way to really get the word out and share the message. So I'd have to attribute it all to them. Yeah.
That was a big thing for us. I think the tagline that he used in that interview with you on the Financial Survival Network, which is still a thing, because he just interviewed me on it about a week ago, was, oh yeah, this teenager is smarter than Ben Bernanke. So that was that's how he introduced you to the world.
Yeah, no, I'd say that's probably not true, but we definitely have different philosophies of how monetary policy should be run, right?
You versus the Fed chairman, yeah, right.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you took this newfound passion for getting an important truth that you thought people needed to know out there. You took it to the public, and what was the reception that you got there?
Yeah, I remember first thinking, will people take me seriously? I'm only 16 years old, and this was then, 8 years ago. Um, but the reception was so positive. It was like, someone 16 years old is interested in this stuff. This is amazing. This is awesome. So it was so supportive from the viewers, taking someone who you probably shouldn't take seriously, taking seriously, that person. So, yeah, it was just such positive feedback. And I think, yeah, it was just great to see that. It was so much fun, doing it, very young, and having that positive feedback and having that support from the viewers and everyone I was interviewing as well.
You just made me remember very vividly when you got invited by Carrie Lutz to speak at the first ever Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Dallas, Texas. And I think the title of your talk was Homeschooling, the Ultimate Liberty of Learning. And we were checking out of the hotel, taking our suitcases to the car in the parking lot, loading up our car, and this elderly gentleman approached us and said, Are you Elijah Johnson's parents? And we didn't deny it. Yes, we are. He said, I just wanted to tell you I heard him speak, and he has given me hope for the next generation of our young people. If someone of his age has the clarity and the awareness that he has, then we've got hope for our next generation in our country. And that really made an impact on my heart because I agree with him for one, and I'm proud of you obviously, but I'm also hopeful that all it takes that inside of us is that call to impact for the good and the call to serve our fellow man and the we're called to greatness, and that by your example of taking serious action and directing your capabilities towards something that really matters and that can really help people. Because the difference between some family getting financially wiped out and all that would flow from that, I mean, it's not just like really inconvenient. It's not like a really bad day. It can just mess up a generation. It can put tremendous stress on marriages, on people's health, on then the argumentation that happens in the family and the struggles, and the kids are not getting their needs met and everything. It can have generational impact. So the difference between that versus people navigating, successfully through a very challenging storm, essentially, can be as simple as hearing the truth being presented to them. And you were like all about this mission. And that makes me think about how then your life became like all about mission later on, which actually caused you to turn your focus a little bit away from your channel. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, definitely. So, I've been Catholic my whole life, and, definitely a Catholic family and everything like that. So one of the things that kind of struck me, so my senior year of college, I was like, this is really important. The faith is the most important thing in my life. So shouldn't I do something about it? Shouldn't I evangelize? And someone said, I think you'd make a good missionary. So I became a missionary for 2 years, actually. And I realized that, yeah, a lot of what I knew about the faith was in my head, but not necessarily in my heart. So it was really a transformation for me to really question, what does it mean to put Jesus at the center of my life? And I think, again, kind of with my channel and everything, there was this struggle as well because I was doing it kind of as a hobby on the side for the first few months, first I think 5-10 months or something, and
of your mission,
of being a missionary,
yeah, okay.
Just kind of doing it as a hobby. But there was this struggle in there because I was like, there's this temptation sometimes to have your YouTube channel be designed to get clicks, right? To be a bit hyperbolic, right? To spread maybe some conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And it's like, for me, I was like, I really shouldn't be doing that. I really want to give accurate information and a fair take on things, right? It might be, biased. We're all biased and everything. We might have our own point of view, which is fine. But when it comes to reporting things that are, very negatively, really unfair about, maybe public officials or organizations and stuff like
and
that.
And speculative in nature. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speculative, very speculative, or sometimes have very little you know, not very much evidence behind them. It was like kind of a wake up call to me. I was like, I really need to, examine my conscience a bit about what I'm posting on my channel. And so that's kind of taken me, and I actually more kind of more kind of focused on, I really want to be 100% focused on mission. I let my channel go for about a year and a half or so. And then, I was like, I think I'd like to maybe get back into doing that. So now I'm working for Miles Franklin. And I really try as best I can to stay away from the hyperbole and all that stuff, and maybe the attacks and stuff like that on people's reputation and stuff, because I don't like that. I want to be, we can be a bit biased, we can have our own point of view, which is perfectly fine. Everyone has that. Everyone has bias. Everyone has their own point of view, which is fine. But I really want to present the news in a fair way, right? That's fair to everyone involved. So,
I just realized we skipped over one more important step in your story, that about you voted with your feet and became an independent journalist and part of independent media just by doing it, and by being invited in there and collaborating, as you mentioned, with others. But then that led into your course of college study.
yeah, so I graduated with a degree of broadcast journalism, and that really taught me a lot about the journalism, industry and the news industry and all that. And yeah, it was a really great experience to learn a lot about that. I think currently, I'm not sure I'd consider myself somewhat of a reporter, but it's more like commentary, right? But yeah, I think it was a perfect fit, for what I'm doing right now, because it shows me some insight about the news industry, and so much of that is exactly what I'm doing on the channel, reporting and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was definitely a big help for me.
I remember you coming home from some of the coursework that you did on journalism saying, when a guest says this or this or this, you really shouldn't just put that out there as the title of the video or whatever, because here's what your journalistic standards are you should be upholding, that kind of thing. So it gave you that whole framework and sort of ground rules for thinking of it. And that just kind of clicked in my mind, because I think now, earlier when you were talking about mission and purpose and that sort of thing, you brought it all together and you said, I'm only going to do things that have, meaningful, positive impact, that are not destructive of people's reputations and that sort of thing, without, if it's speculative and that kind of thing. And so it all came together as far as doing journalism and doing it in the right way for good. So, okay, Miles Franklin. People who watch my channel are familiar with me as an independent representative for Miles Franklin for bullion sales. You're doing specifically something very different from Miles Franklin.
Yeah, so currently I'm running the Miles Franklin YouTube channel, and it's great because it's the same mission that I had when I started my own YouTube channel, is really to give information to people in a new way and make it accessible to people, right? Because it's so important about what's happening right now in the financial system and how people can protect themselves in the future. That message is something I really believe in and think is really important. So essentially, the whole idea behind my position at Miles Franklin is I want to make this kind of information accessible to people, whether it be through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Those are the platforms that are kind of, I'm using right now. But yeah, we have the Miles Franklin Market Update, which is interviews, like these and stuff like that, on Mondays and Fridays. And then, yeah, I just make informational videos as well on the other days of the week. So yeah, it's been really a perfect fit given my background and everything. And it's just been a great way to, continue the mission that I had when I started. So
What kind of informational videos are people able to find out?
yeah, so it's essentially like, how do you invest in gold, right? What kind of gold coins or bars, or what kind of gold bullion can people invest in? What is the spot price is just one video I made. So it's really kind of
not what the current spot price number is, but
but what is the spot price?
How do they get that? I see. Okay.
What is the concept of it? How is it set? What are the futures markets and all that kind of stuff? So it kind of gives an intro to a lot of people who are just getting interested in these topics. It can give an intro for that, and also people who have been interested in this for a long time, it can also kind of continue their education in this. So it's a lot of different topics. I had a video on the gold silver ratio. I had a video on the recent pullback, and we had David Scheckman, the founder of Miles Franklin, on for that video. So it's kind of some news, some information, but all focused on like gold, silver, and finance and the whole financial system.
So where can people get access to these particular videos you've been producing?
Yeah, so it's youtube.com/MilesFranklinCO, Miles Franklin Co.
All right. We'll put a link to that in the description of this video, folks.
Yeah, and also Facebook.com/MilesFranklinCo and Twitter.com/MilesFranklinCo as well, is where we'll be posting as well. Yeah.
Where do you see this going next? I mean, you've had quite a journey here from the curious young guy that just was starting a coin collection to now somebody who's been speaking at conferences, publishing his own channel, now publishing for Miles Franklin. One question that we get asked a lot is about how long. People want to know where we're at in this cycle. People can't deny if they've learned a little bit about history, and most people haven't, but once they get informed that fiat currencies always end badly and that we're in one of those gonna end badly cycles if history has a way of rhyming. One of the questions we often get asked is, where are we at in that cycle? So a lot of the expert guests whom we have on our channel try to help give people some perspective of understanding signs that they're seeing around you. Because you mentioned earlier, you don't want to say negative things about individuals or whatever that are speculative. They don't have data or facts to substantiate them. And yet, when people are given the eyes to see and when people are led to perceive correctly, there's tons of examples in our current lives of things going off the rails or things, inflation being higher than what we're being told it is and that sort of thing. So do you have any personal perspective on where you think we're at in this cycle, or what will you be looking to be your guide in understanding how things are going, what's next?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what we've been seeing, especially in response to the COVID crisis, is kind of exactly, well, there's a good argument, maybe this was necessary to do the stimulus and stuff. Regardless of that argument, this is more money into the system. This is inflationary. It was the biggest stimulus bill ever passed by the U.S. This is the kind of stuff where the kinds of things that we're seeing is what you'd expect to see if we were going to continue the trajectory of devaluing the dollar and possibly a dollar crisis coming in the future. So I guess that's what I'd say is, yes, there's a lot of legitimate arguments for the stimulus. People are really hurting right now. At the same time, regardless of that argument, these are the kind of steps that you'd expect to see, more inflationary policies and stuff like that, that would eventually lead to a currency crisis. So my outlook hasn't changed. It's probably gotten stronger. That looks like a very strong possibility of where we're heading. And I guess just politically, I feel a bit conflicted as well, or not conflicted, but concerned, because I think, we're so divided as a country right now. And so much of the news is negative right now, and people are really, with the coronavirus and everything, a lot of uncertainty happening and social unrest. So I don't see, with the economy and I guess just division in the country, I see the possibility of it getting worse, obviously, with the election and everything, uncertainty with respect to mail-in voting and all that. So I'd say get prepared, hope for the best, but plan for the worst, right? So those are kind of the two things: a lot of political and social unrest, uncertainty coming, and then we're on the trajectory for a currency crisis. We're probably more on that trajectory than we were before the COVID crisis. So that's kind of my outlook for the future. Not necessarily going to happen, but it would be good to prepare for those for those scenarios.
And back to that analogy of being on the train track and the train is coming and you feel like you felt compelled back at age 16 to tell people about it. It's like there's been ignorance and confusion, kind of like clouds of fog blowing across the train track. And once in a while you go, is there really a train coming? And all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, yes, there's really a train coming.
Yeah. I think that may have been COVID was kind of the wake-up call for a lot of us. It's like, yeah, this idea of prepping, this idea of preparing, even I was kind of thinking, well, is this really necessary? And then COVID
You
hit.
laughed at our pantry full of toilet paper and Kleenex when we had you open the door.
I was proven wrong. And it's become something that I feel like no one laughs about anymore. And that's something that we should take seriously. So,
well, we've been speaking with Elijah K. Johnson, also known as Elijah Kaiser Johnson, of the Miles Franklin Market Update on Liberty and Finance. Elijah, we just appreciate you joining us this first time and spilling the beans with everyone that you're my son, I'm your dad. So that's part of how I got into this was because of your good example and teaching me how to do it. So thanks to you. And thank you for being here for this first time as a full-length, long-format interview guest on Liberty and Finance.
Definitely. Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome. To acquire gold and silver, just go to libertyandfinance.com. When the main site comes up, click on Bullion Sales. That's libertyandfinance.com, Bullion Sales. You'll see my name, Dunagun Kaiser, my phone number, and my associate, Kaiser Johnson, his phone number, our email, libertyandfinance@protonmail.com.